Right, so good afternoon, everyone. We will begin today's session. It's supposed to be a session where we'll cover each and everything with regards to UPSC Prelims. Now, parts of the session I've covered in multiple videos. I've already taken a session like this, and like it'll be a distillation of that. We'll keep it short and simple. The idea over here is to give you everything that you require in order to clear Prelims 2026. So, सबसे पहली चीज what we'll be covering, we'll talk about prelims ka info, pattern of the exam, to-do list, not to-do list. Then we'll talk about the syllabus, current affairs, how many months do you do, how to cover, all of these sorts of things. Then I'll give you some topper secrets. Then importance of PYQs, I'll show you some examples from previous year questions. And then revision, notes, consistency, mindset. Finally, there'll be a Q&A session at the end. End game क्या है? सबसे पहले इसके बारे में बात करते हैं. What is the idea? Can we even do civil services exam in 4 months? So if we're talking about the entire civil services exam, I would say it is unlikely. If you are somebody who has just started preparation and you're thinking that just with 4 months of preparation you will clear the entire exam, highly unlikely, close to impossible. However, if I'm just talking about prelims, it is possible. And this possibility is what we're going to be talking about in today's session. That how is it possible, what are the things that you're supposed to do, and why we are saying that it is possible in 4 months. सबसे पहली चीज हमें समझनी है that with civil services exam there is a big problem, that there is just too much to do. The problem with civil services exam and the reason why people get this sort of a feeling of overwhelm is because of this. Just too much to do, too many things. I have to prepare for CSAT, I have to prepare for GS, I have to give tests, I have to also look at previous year questions. I'm sure all of you will have heard that previous year questions are very, very important and that you're supposed to do, you are supposed to analyze PYQs. Have you heard this? Yes or no? How many of you know how to do it? How do you analyze previous year questions? Are you sure that I understand what needs to be done over here? Yes or no? Good. So that's the idea. Some people know, some people don't know, some people are not sure. There are some doubts. There are some, issues with this. Now, prelims के लिए notes बनाने हैं, नहीं बनाने हैं, best sources क्या हैं, then, consistency कैसे maintain करनी है, physical fitness, mental fitness, right? How many of you in this session are above 25 years of age? Right, there are some people. Now, for those people, obviously, life gets a little more hectic and there are other factors that you'll have to take into account. But the people who are under 25 years of age, you have a lot more energy. And वो energy को किस तरीके से सही channelize किया जाए, that is a different problem. People who are, let's say, 28, 29 and preparing, maybe they were working, maybe they had some constraints and now they've started preparing. So then, possible to be a little more focused because you know how things work and you know what works for you. So all of these things you have to, take into account while you're preparing for civil services exam. And उसमें अब सबसे बड़ा एक question आता है that, I need to be a genius in order to clear. How many of you at one point or another in the last 1 year have told yourself that I am an average student? Yes or no? So that I'm an average student is an identity that you have created. In order to actually clear civil services exam, you will have to change that identity. You have to change your identity into becoming a learner. You may have been an average student, but you don't want to stay there anymore. How many of you don't want to stay average? Good. So this commitment is something that we'll carry throughout, not just this session, but I want you to take it back from this session if you don't take anything else back. Because for civil services exam, you really don't need to be a genius. Einstein का intellect नहीं चाहिए आपको. And particularly if there are people who are that smart, they will possibly fail at civil services exam because this is a very boring preparation thing, right? It's a lot of repetition of the same basic material again and again and again. You need to be slightly above average. Let's say 100 का IQ अगर हमारा average है, तो maybe 110, 115, थोड़ा सा slightly above average if you are, it's good, right? Because you have to make sense of things, you have to analyze, you have to do a number of things, but you really don't need to be a genius. And in this, please keep in mind that how many of you think that IQ is fixed? कि आज जो मेरा IQ है, that is what it is going to remain. Yes or no? Absolutely awesome. It is dynamic. It is something that can be changed through practice and effort. And that is what the point is. Even if, let's say, you are average, if you feel that you are average, we want to change that identity. We want to address that. And we want to work to becoming smarter. And that is an identity that I want you to imbibe, that of a learner. Somebody who learns from their mistakes, who grows and becomes better with time. Right. Now, there is a concept that I want to talk about before we get into the session, which is hierarchy of knowledge. For those of you that want to study or use ChatGPT later on, how many of you use ChatGPT for your preparation or in general or any other chatbot for that matter? The idea is that these are tools that when I was preparing were not available to me, but they are very, very powerful tools, and if used in the right manner, they can be very helpful for your preparation, and I would highly recommend that you use them. Now, Bloom's taxonomy, the idea, I'll give you a basic breakdown of it, but I wanted to go back and try and talk about this with ChatGPT. कभी भी आपको लगता है that you don't understand a concept, so ask it to use this Bloom's taxonomy and break down that concept for you. What it will do is ChatGPT will break it down into 5 or 6 levels. कभी YouTube पे वो वीडियोस देखी हैं आपने where there is an expert who is explaining a particular concept at 5 or 6 different levels. First they'll start with a 5-year-old, then they'll start with a 10-12-year-old, then with a college student, then with a PhD, and then with a expert. Have you seen any of those videos or that kind of a thing? That is something, if you've not seen, it's absolutely fine, but I want you to use AI in such a manner. Use AI to help you understand at multiple levels and layers. क्योंकि होता क्या है? Let's say, for example, everybody knows what is Tropic of Cancer. Yes or no? Is there anybody who doesn't know what is Tropic of Cancer? Everybody knows. So, knowing Tropic of Cancer is this, the most basic layer of knowledge, which is that I remember a fact. What? That Tropic of Cancer is 23.5 degrees north ka latitude. What does that mean? What is the understanding of that? The understanding of that is that 23.5 degree north is the point where you get direct sunlight on summer solstice in the northern hemisphere, which is 21-22 June. Right? 21-22 June के आसपास on the Tropic of Cancer, you are getting direct sunlight. That is what is the understanding of that concept. Application पे जब हम आते हैं, तो what does it mean? That some areas will receive more sunlight, more than maybe 12 hours of sunlight, and some areas will receive less than 12 hours of sunlight, and that is somewhere determined by the date and Tropic of Cancer. अब इसके लिए एक example देखते हैं. This is from previous year questions. I'll just show you. Alright, so this is that same concept in a very basic form and in an applied form. These are both previous year questions that have been asked in prelims. In the northern hemisphere, can you give me the answer for this? A, B, C, or D? I have just given you the answer per se, but A, B, C, or D? Right, everybody gets that it's in the second half of the month of June, 21-22. But would you say that question number 15 over here is harder than the first one? Even though concept is the same. On June 21 every year, which of the following latitudes experience a sunlight of more than 12 hours? Would you say that this question is harder than the previous one? If it's not harder, absolutely awesome. But it is a requirement that you understand the concept and then you are able to apply it in a new manner. Right? Solve isko kar lenge when we come to it. But what I want to clarify to you is that prelims will ask you or test your knowledge at these 3 levels: remembering, understanding, and application. A lot of questions will be direct in prelims. This particular scheme, ABC options, do you know? Yes or no? A lot of them will test your understanding and application. A lot more recently, understanding and application pe questions aa rahe hain. Just like the question that we saw, where, instead of asking you directly, when is the longest day of the summer, when is the summer solstice, that is a very direct remembering based question. Now it is asking you applied questions. When it comes to mains, these 3 layers are important. Right? application, analysis, and evaluation. And when you go into previous year questions of mains also, you will see these words very often. Analyze what are the various options available to India in ABC particular situation, or analyze the situation of women in modern India, these sorts of things, or evaluate whether the government schemes have performed well. These are words that you will very often see in mains ka papers. These two layers you'll not see in prelims mein you will see 1, 2 and 3. There is a sixth layer of Bloom's taxonomy, which is creation of new knowledge, but that is for PhD scholars and not relevant for civil services exam preparation. Is this hierarchy of knowledge clear to everyone? इसको जाके दोबारा चैट जीपीटी के साथ खेलना इसके बारे में, because the more you use this idea, explain things to me on these 5 levels, the easier you will understand things. Right. Now, moving on, let's start talking about prelims. These were the basic things that I wanted you to have in mind, that you don't need to be a genius and knowledge works at multiple levels. Even if I understand a concept, I may not be able to apply it, right? So therefore, problems can be different. Sometimes there are people who will be very quick at these things. I just tell you a concept and you'll be able to apply it automatically. Other times, there are people who require an example to show them ki, okay, how is it to be applied? So you have to be aware of what kind of a person you are. Like per se, when I was preparing, let's say for IIT JEE, for even civil services, a lot of the times I required some examples. I was not able to naturally apply the knowledge that I had gained. Over time now, I'm able to apply these things. But in the beginning, I used to be somebody who wanted examples. So if you are that kind of a person, you have to look for examples if they are not given to you. Right? So this is how practically these levels of knowledge are going to impact your studies. Now, pattern and बाकी चीजों के बारे में बात करते हैं. GS and CSAT. There are 2 papers that you have in civil services exam. GS is marked, meaning this is where your cutoff will be decided, and CSAT is qualifying. Right? CSAT is qualifying, meaning you have to get only about 33% marks. And if you get these 33% marks, which is 67, 68 marks, you have cleared, and GS is what is determining the cutoff. Now, cutoff in the last couple of years has hovered around 70 to 75 to 85, 90. इसी के आसपास cutoff रहता है. मतलब क्या हुआ इसका? If I have to score 85, I have to get about 42 to 45 questions correct. If I'm getting a lot more wrong, let's say I'm getting 20 questions wrong, so then this number goes up. I have to get 50, 60 correct so that I can get 30 wrong. तो कितना क्वेश्चन अटेम्प्ट करने हैं, क्या करने हैं, is also determined by generally where the cutoff lie. Number of questions, GS में you have 100 questions, CSAT में you have 80 questions. तो marks per question obviously change हो जाएंगे because both of these papers are 200 marks each. Here you have +2 and -2/3. And here you have +2.5, which is 200 divided by 80, and -2.5 by 3, which comes out to about 0.87. Right? Marks per question, negative marking, ये हो गई. Timing, is everybody aware of what time prelims happens? Prelims का timing सबको clear है? Anybody here who doesn't know what times the paper happen? Right? So good. That means people are not clear. So we should talk about it. Good. Timing की अगर बात करें तो general studies का paper happens at 9:30 a.m. Both of these papers are 2 hours each. And the second paper happens at 2:30 p.m. How much of a gap will exist between these papers? थोड़ा testing भी कर लें. If the first paper for 2 hours is at 9:30, second paper for 2 hours at 2:30, what is the gap between the 2 papers? It's 3 hours. And that's what you have to keep in mind, that 3 hours is a long period of time, right? You can get lunch, you can like go out, have a nice lunch, XYZ, come back and still have some time left. At the other end, what you can do is you can practice a little bit, you can review some of your formulas. So therefore, the 3 hour ka gap between these papers is something that you have to also think about. It is not just I've given GS and now I'm done, because CSAT is also a hurdle for a lot of people. How many of you feel CSAT is hard? So For those that feel CSAT is hard, please keep in mind that every year in CSAT, you only have to solve about 30 to 35 questions. 30 से 35 questions, if you're doing them right, even if you're getting, let's say, 4 or 5 questions wrong in that, it's fine. You'll clear. इससे ज़्यादा नहीं करना है. CSAT is hard when we think about the whole thing. Ki I have to attempt 80 questions. No, you don't have to attempt 80 questions. Do you think it is very hard to solve 40 questions in 2 hours? 2 hours में 120 minutes में you have to solve 40 questions, not more than that. 40 questions, if you pick and choose out of 80, it is possible for you to find the ones that are easy for you. And that's what you have to keep in mind with CSAT. Ki bhai, don't make it harder than it needs to be. There are complications with the subject, there are issues, but a lot of the issues are also in our mind because we are constantly, just like we were saying, I'm an average student. How many of you have said this to yourself in the last 1 year that I am bad at math? So Anirudh, good, but a lot of people are saying this. I want you to again change that. You may have been bad at math, but you don't need to stay bad at math. And number two, you don't have to become an expert at math either. I want to do just enough so that I can, comfortably clear. Comfortably clear का क्या मतलब है? I only have to do 40 questions. I can get 5-7 questions wrong in that also. तो इस तरीके से when I start thinking about this exam a bit analytically, my life becomes easier. Right? So coming to the next. To-do list में सबसे पहले, before we get into the sources and all of these things, I want to talk about some very basic things, which is like we saw in Bloom's taxonomy, hierarchy of knowledge. Your job is to understand, then apply. Don't memorize. If you are memorizing, it will be very hard for you to apply because you just know a fact. You are just working at the first layer of knowledge. You need depth. Depth क्या है? I need to be able to apply. I need to be able to understand the concepts that I am reading. Just memorizing it is not going to work out. Second, simplify and prioritize. If you are feeling that there are too many things to do and like let's say polity पढ़ना है तो उसमें लक्ष्मीकांत भी करना है and then हम coaching का notes भी करना है and then ये भी करना है वो भी करना है अभी now I've said use ChatGPT also. So then if it is becoming more and more complex, stop, take a step back and think about how you can simplify the whole process. It does not have to be hard. It is going to be hard because it will require you to be consistent. It will require you to be thorough. It does not have to be hard just in the things that you have to do. Simplify, and second, prioritize. You do not have enough time to do everything. In this exam, particularly, let's say when we talk about current affairs or some of your dynamic subjects like science and tech, international relations, these are subjects that no matter what I do, there will be some problems. Like for example, if I talk about last year 2025 में, there were a couple of questions जिनमें current affairs जो आया था, that was as late as January and February में कुछ current affairs हुआ था, which was asked in your exam in May. There was a question on OPEC. You can go back and check it. उसमें there was a particular section where they asked कि भाई okay, Indonesia is a member of OPEC or not. Indonesia का member status had changed in the month of January of 2025. And similarly, they asked a question on Majorana 1 chip, which is a quantum computing chip. That chip itself was launched in February. तो इतना मेरे को current affairs पे नहीं दिमाग खाना है. I want to prioritize. क्या चीजें exactly prioritize करेंगे, कौन से subjects ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है, we'll talk about it. But this is something that you have to keep in mind. You will not be able to do everything. So therefore, I need to prioritize on the basis of 80-20 rule. How many of you have heard of this rule, 80-20 rule? Alright, Pareto principle बोलते हैं इसको. The core idea over here is that there are 20% topics which get you 80% of the marks. I always have to think about कि अच्छा, if I'm studying geography, if I'm studying polity, is there something that I can focus a lot more on because it will get me the extra marks, whereas there will always be some issue कि अच्छा, they asked me very minute details of some particular scheme or let's say some tribal movement. अब tribal movements इतनी सारी हैं कि मतलब I can spend my entire 4-month preparation journey thinking about just tribal movements and still get the questions wrong. On the other hand, history में nationalist movement very basic, do it well, 3, 4, 5 questions कहीं नहीं गए. So that is the Pareto principle. Focus on the things that are getting you the marks. We are not doing this in order to become experts at the subject. We are doing this to clear an exam. For that, we need to prioritize. Finally, get feedback. Feedback can be from your friends, feedback can be from family, from your mentors. If you have joined a class, then from a class. A lot of you are here who are already part of our courses. So, mentor calls pe aao, baat karo, but get feedback. If you're facing problems, if you're facing difficulties, ask for help. Don't be like कि मैं अपने आप से कर लूंगा. Sure, maybe you can do it. But if you can resolve that faster, get it. Finally, you have to be boring. How many of you feel that fear of missing out? FOMO कितने लोगों को feel होता है कि my friends are going to parties and they are traveling and I am just sitting here in my room just preparing for civil services exam. How many of you feel that? So there are some people who are saying not anymore. Good. I have to make that choice. This is something that you have to keep in mind. This is a choice that you make, that I am going to sit here in my room and do the work because it is for my future. I am doing the hard thing so that my future can be better. My friends are going to party now. Fine. I don't mind that. Why? Because I'm making that sacrifice. You have to choose that sacrifice, because if you're not chosen that sacrifice, it will constantly be on your head ki arey yaar, matlab shit, why am I doing this? And you'll constantly feel regret and you'll constantly feel ki bhai matlab kya ho raha hai, kyun ho raha hai? And then eventually it will turn into guilt. Kyun? Kyunki Instagram pe you've been following so many people and then they're like ki bhai do to ja rahe hain, main kyun nahi ja raha hu? And then you'll go into that whole spiral. You'll not study, and then at the end of the day, पढ़ाई भी नहीं हुई, घूमने भी नहीं गए. Right. So this is your to-do list. Not to-do list भी है एक. How many of you have a folder in your desktop, tablet, wherever, where you have a lot of these PDFs कि अच्छा इसका notes मिले थे मेरे को, let me just save that. So these are things that all of us do. These are things that are very, very normal. Why? Because when we are preparing for an exam, that is a very information dense exam. So whenever we get information from anywhere, we think that, this is something that could be useful to me. And we like to become hoarders, right? We are effectively becoming hoarders. Don't hoard information. Use information for a specific purpose, which comes back to the idea that you have to simplify, you have to prioritize. इतनी सारी PDF काम नहीं आएंगी. लक्ष्मीकांत and bare acts of the constitution, basic, इसके ज्यादा और कुछ करने की आपको जरूरत नहीं है. If you do that, good to go. Geography के लिए NCRTs, GC Leong, कुछ करने की और जरूरत नहीं है. 50 PDFs you'll find, they are going to be a distraction. You have to say no to those distractions. Second, how many of you watch some shortcuts and hack videos? Okay, there is this some elimination trick that is happening. I'm going to go and watch that video, or some elimination PDF that has come up. Very good. Nobody is watching any shortcuts and hack videos. Good. Dekho, I won't say that there are no hacks. There are possible ways in which you can think about the exam, which provide some easier path through it. But they come after you have done 1 or 2 readings of the syllabus. Only after you have done 1 or 2 readings do you understand ki, okay, this is a more important area. I need to focus a lot more here. If you do that from the beginning, to kya hoga? You will just end up wasting time, because these things can be useful, but once you have done some of the hard work, not in the beginning. Finally, if you're reading multiple sources, history ke liye, I'm also reading Spectrum, I'm also reading Bipin Chandra, I'm also reading, Shekhar Bandyopadhyay. Okay, I'm covering history from multiple angles. No, you're not. You're wasting time. Focus on one particular book. Do that multiple times. That is the way to go. Don't worry about ki, acha, I might miss something which is specifically given in Shekhar Bandyopadhyay, Plassey to Partition, which is not given in Spectrum or Bipin Chandra. Yes, you will miss out on some things. But by doing one particular resource 4 times, 5 times, multiple times, single source into 5, that is the way to go over here. It will save you time in the long run, because you will achieve that depth that we were talking about. Right? Depth is what is required in this exam. Finally, how many of you feel that you are addicted to your phones or Instagram or Twitter or आजकल क्या चल रहा है? How many of you are using Discord. So this is also, please keep in mind, if you are aware that there is a problem here, it is your responsibility to take care of that problem. You have to be an adult. Nobody is coming to save you. I can tell you what needs to be done, but it is you in the end who has to do it. And for that, you have to be an adult. You have to take this professionally, meaning you have to show up. You can't negotiate with this कि नहीं नहीं आज रील देख लेते हैं, कल से काम होगा, नहीं होगा कल से काम, कल भी रील होगी. So all of these things, please keep in mind. मतलब WhatsApp is like one of the worst in this. क्योंकि क्या होता है, टिंग थोड़ा सा कुछ आता है, I'm doing something and then I'm checking statuses and then like what not. Personally, what I've done is I've switched off notifications of all apps. There is no app on my phone that can notify me except for, one AI tool that I use very frequently. Now I also realize sometimes I'm doing a lot of time pass with that AI tool also. But the idea is no app on your phone should be notifying you without your permission. You can go and check that app when you require. Message के लिए आप बोल दो लोगों को that I will be late in replying to my messages. I will not be instantly available because I have something to do. You have to make these decisions. You have to take these tough calls. You have to sacrifice some availability in order to work on a future that is good for you. Right. तो ये हो गई हमारी to do and not to do list. Now let's talk about syllabus and sources. Syllabus and sources में GS में when we talk about it, so there are static subjects and there are dynamic subjects. Right. Static subjects हमारे क्या हैं? History of India and the Indian national movement, Indian and world geography, then polity and governance, and economic and social development. So these are your static subjects, these four. Why are they static? क्योंकि यहां पे जो concepts हैं, of these concepts, 60 to 70% of the questions are repeated almost every year. If I talk about particular subjects, polity में every year you'll be getting questions somewhere related to speaker. प्रेसिडेंट का इलेक्शन हो गया तो प्रेसिडेंट पे आ जाएगा, ऑर्डिनेंस का कुछ हो गया या कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट है तो उस पे क्वेश्चन आ जाएगा. बेसिक थिंग्स हैं. करंट अफेयर्स इज जस्ट गिविंग यू अ लेंस ऑफ ओके दिस इज नाउ इंपॉर्टेंट, बट कॉन्सेप्ट तो बेसिक वही है ना. आई डोंट हैव टू सडनली लर्न अबाउट अ होल न्यू थिंग. नो यू डोंट. इकोनॉमी में ऑलमोस्ट एवरी ईयर बैंकिंग ऑपरेशंस पे देयर इज अ क्वेश्चन, government budgeting pe there is a question, RBI ka monetary policy pe there is a question. These are three areas that if you can cover, 10-15 marks nowhere in polity, economy. Similarly geography की अगर मैं बात करूं तो then like oceanography, climatology, दो areas हैं जहाँ पे हर साल every year there is one or two questions. We'll see some questions in the session also, but that's what you have to keep in mind. These are static subjects. 60 to 70% of whatever is being asked in these subjects is repeated. Therefore, your priority and your first focus when you're doing general studies is to cover these subjects. If these are not done, don't worry about current affairs, because this is where you're getting the marks. This is where you're qualifying the cutoff. बाकी सब जो चीज है ना जरूरी है. I'm not saying you ignore them completely, but there is a priority order. We talked about it. Simplify and prioritize. Prioritize. Second आते हैं हमारे environment and ecology, general science, and international relations, current events. So these are your dynamic subjects. Now dynamic subjects mein, like we talked about previously, the dynamicity is so much that something that has happened in January, February, March can possibly be asked in your exam. Therefore, my priority kya hai? That 60 to 70% which is getting me the most amount of marks. This is something that you have to consciously choose. क्योंकि डर लगेगा. How many of you suddenly feel afraid? मतलब you're doing polity, you're doing economy, and then suddenly I'm just like very concerned about the fact कि यार मतलब current affairs रह गया, चलो chuck it, let me do current affairs for a day or two. How many of you have done that in the last 1 year? होता है, and this is very normal. This sort of feeling you will constantly get during your civil services preparation because yeah, it is natural. Human beings and human beings we tend to get distracted. Distracted by what? Something new and shiny. So you have to consciously be aware of the fact that any new PDF, any new material, XYZ, whatever is coming, new news, new information, all of it is a distraction. Focus on the static. Static एक बार हो गया ना तो you will yourself feel confident. Right. Now coming to CSAT. CSAT में क्या रहता है हमारा? Basic चीजें हैं. There are 3 sections. There is comprehension, there is logical reasoning, and then there is maths. अब बोलने को मैथ्स यहां पे है बट मैथ्स में बहुत कुछ है. And if I break down the sections particularly, I think every year you get 25 to 27 questions on comprehension, around 35 40 questions in math, and the remaining in logical reasonings, about 20 questions. So this is the sort of breakup, right? Isko 32 33 kar lo, math you can add up. Now remember that with this breakup, what did I tell you? That you have to only attempt 40 questions. I don't have to top in CSAT. CSAT is not being counted for my merit, nor is it being counted for the cutoff. So why am I worried about I have to do so much math? No, you don't have to do so much math. You have to only pick up certain topics in math and then master the hell out of them. If you want something, go for this. Number systems. Number systems say every year 7 to 8 questions are coming. If you can just do that in CSAT, 7 to 8 questions you'll be able to do here. Logical reasoning and comprehension में मतलब ये अब इंग्लिश देख लेना, ठीक है? तो प्लीज गो with this analytical mindset that I don't have to do everything. Even in CSAT, I can prioritize. How many of you are very comfortable with comprehension? Right, that has been the case, at least what we've seen so far, that people are slightly more comfortable in comprehension. Still, it is possible to make mistakes. Now, for all of these subjects, what we'll be doing is we've already started with this series on YouTube. Like Neelam ma'am came out with a long video for polity. I came out with a long video for geography. We will come out with these videos for each and every of the GS का subjects, also for CSAT. What we will do is जो मैं अभी आपको ये चीज बोल रहा हूँ कि the 80-20 rule, the most important areas which are constantly getting repeated, we will tell it to you specifically. But at the same time, that doesn't mean कि मतलब बस हो गया वो वीडियो को देख के then go back and study and like check, cross check us. Always think of it as ki whatever information that you're getting, I have to cross verify, because if you do that, it will stick in your head more. If you try to disprove something, and this is something that I used to do quite a lot, if somebody has told me ABC, I'll try and disprove them, because when I'm trying to disprove them, I will try harder ki I want to make a point ki bhai tu galat hai, bolo batao mere ko main kaise galat hu, because in that process you will learn so much. So all of these things we will be bringing out over the next couple of days for CSAT and all of these. Let's talk about now the resources. Now for history, if you're talking about, so there are these basic books, and particularly अगर ancient and medieval की बात कर रहे हैं, तो instead of these, if you want to do these old NCERTs, these are also something that you can do. ये जो books हैं, these are just reprints of these old NCERTs. So old NCERTs, if they are not available, you can get these books. Obviously, paper quality will be better if you like collecting books. Nice to have and all that. For modern India, this particular book, अब इसको भी मतलब because this is a 1000+ page book, नया edition कोई आ गया होगा और 1100 पेज हो गया होगा. I want to be a little selective. I don't want to read the whole thing. I want to first start step by step. अब जैसे first unit है, which is talking about historiography, which is talking about how do we know about these things. Ignore. करने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है, right? Similarly, मतलब there'll be a lot of indices at the end which are giving you which session of Congress happened, when, where, why. For the beginning, ignore. Focus on the most important part, Gandhian movement. उधर से शुरू करो, वहां से जाके फिर then आसपास की चीजें start reading. Never think of कि you have to read these books first page to last page. You can pick and choose. Do the important things first, and important things कैसे समझ आएंगे, that we figure out through your previous year questions. Right. Now, beyond this, I think art and culture पहले देखते हैं. Right. Art and culture is another major part of it. And art and culture में, I think this is one of the best books. Introduction to Indian Art. Why is this the best book? Because this gives you a lot of images. Right. तो जैसे अब question आ जाए कभी कभी गांधारा versus मथुरा School of Art में क्या differentiation करना है, I can read a description, but if I have seen the image, I will be able to do these things much easier. So all of these three books have a lot of these images, and direct questions बहुत सालों से इन्हीं 3 किताबों से art and culture में आते रहते हैं. So these are your basic books for history. Now history in this, because of so much that we have to do, becomes that very big subject. बोलने को now history से you will only get about 15 questions total. And those 15 questions also include art and culture, ancient history, modern history, medieval history. So like these 15 questions become very, very heavy. अब इन 15 क्वेश्चंस में जनरल ब्रेकअप क्या चल रहा है? 5 क्वेश्चंस एंशिएंट, 5 क्वेश्चन medieval, 5 क्वेश्चंस मॉडर्न. Modern is the one which is also going to be very useful for you for mains, so prioritize that. Then we will come to ancient and medieval also. Ancient and medieval ko, instead of going through those two books, start with these. Start through the lens of art and culture, then selectively read from the other books. क्योंकि यहाँ पे particularly art and culture, particularly ancient and medieval में, it is important that I have breadth. In ancient medieval art and culture, breadth is more important for me than depth. I should be aware of अच्छा what are the different dynasties. I don't really care about कि हर dynasty के अंदर क्या हो रहा था. If this is not making sense to you right now, once you read these subjects, these statements will make a lot more sense to you. Now these subjects, polity and economy, here depth is more important than breadth. If I've just heard of a concept, I may not be able to solve a question, because nowadays they're asking you a lot of applied questions. जैसे पहले क्या होता था, maybe 10 years ago, they would ask you what is fiscal deficit, what is revenue deficit, right? Basic question. Now what they've done is they'll give you कि अच्छा government spent this much money, got this much tax revenue, borrowed this much money, calculate fiscal deficit. What is that? Concept is the same, fiscal deficit, but it is now applied. So Indian polity and Indian economy mein, these are some basic things that you have to keep in mind. And particularly these are the books. Indian Economy Handbook written by Ketan sir. Ketan sir is your economics faculty at UPSCprep.com, somebody who's also a ranker. तो मतलब UPSCprep.com की हमारी टीम में we have like people who have cleared 3-4 times, and that's the thing कि when somebody who has cleared the exam is also guiding you and giving you such a great resource. Now this book is available for free. अब फ्री के लिए एक्सेस आपको करना है तो व्हाट यू कैन डू, वी जनरली शेयर दिस 5-month प्लान टाइप ऑफ थिंग्स. यहाँ पे रिसोर्स लिस्ट है, तो इंडियन इकोनॉमी हैंडबुक का यहाँ पे आपको लिंक मिल जाएगा. सिमिलरली आई टॉक अबाउट द सीसैट वर्कबुक, तो सीसैट वर्कबुक का यहाँ लिंक मिल जाएगा. एनसीईआरटीज वगैरह चाहिए तो ऑल ऑफ दीज थिंग्स वी हैव ऑलरेडी क्यूरेटेड, यू कैन गेट देम फ्रॉम हियर. राइट, नाउ कमिंग टू ज्योग्राफी. नाउ ज्योग्राफी इज माय सब्जेक्ट. तो ज्योग्राफी में हमें करनी है 3 एनसीईआरटी. There is a NCERT, right, which is fundamentals of physical geography. Fundamentals of physical geography की वजह I would prefer that you do GC Leong. Now GC Leong की there is also orange book. You can do that, but this one, India Physical Environment, is the best NCERT of the lot. It is about 80 to 90 pages. I want you to mug up those entire 80 to 90 pages, and geography में 3-4 question आपके वहीं से वहीं हो जाएंगे. 80 to 90 pages which are getting you, मतलब that one book is that core area in geography. Now coming to class 12th key, this is background and this is the more important one. इसको अच्छे से करना है, but अब इस NCERT में क्या प्रॉब्लम रहता है, that this data might not be up to date, right? This was last updated in 2021. So since then some other things have happened, crops का production figures might have changed, so that is something that you can check up. Fundamentals of human geography बेसिक है, एक बार ग्लांस थ्रू कर सकते हो, पूरा डिटेल में इसमें जाने की जरूरत नहीं है. ज्योग्राफी में द मच मोर इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग टू डू इज दिस. एनी प्लेस दैट इज इन न्यूज, लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल nowadays there are 2 places which are very very frequently in news. One, both of them are related to President Donald Trump. Who can tell me what are the 2 places that I'm talking about? Greenland, Venezuela. तो प्रेसिडेंट डोनाल्ड ट्रंप जहां भी चीज को हाथ लगा रहा है, देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ ज्योग्राफी इन्वॉल्व्ड. I want you to then go and look at the maps कि ग्रीनलैंड के आसपास क्या है, what are the areas, मतलब how big is Greenland, आर्कटिक सर्कल के अंदर है पूरा या आर्कटिक सर्कल के बाहर है. वेनेजुएला की बात कर रहे हैं तो does the equator pass through Venezuela, yes or no? बेसिक चीजें. But if I've looked at map, if I've looked at who are the neighbors of Venezuela, there will be some map question which will come, which will be very easy for me to solve. These are the ways in which current affairs somehow at times also inform your static subjects, right? Now, coming to our dynamic subjects, all of these are to be used as reference books only. Reference books का क्या मतलब है? That I want to read them, but selectively. Selectively क्यों? क्योंकि all of the information that is given in the books, उसके बाद question आने शुरू होते हैं, right? All of the things that are given in the book के बाद current affairs are what I need to focus on. So in these areas, I refer to these books. but it is much more important that I focus on current affairs. So these are the subjects that I would want you to focus on after you have done the static, because एक बार static आपका हो जाएगा ना, तो like we talked about at the beginning that 85 to 90 का कट ऑफ है हमारा, and उस कट ऑफ में roughly maybe 70-75 marks you will be able to score just through the static subjects. Last 10-15 marks I need from here. So therefore my focus should be relatively in that priority order. Right. Finally coming to CSAT. So CSAT के लिए there is a workbook which I just showed you where to get from. ये sheet है, you can get that from मतलब will share on email also XYZ CSAT का workbook, यहाँ से आप click करके ले सकते हो. इसके अलावा we have recently done a giveaway for reaching 500,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we are giving a CSAT test series for everybody who has registered for that. So if you've not registered so far, please go and register. Simple idea यहाँ पे क्या है कि भाई CSAT में कुछ basic मुझे theory चाहिए and the rest of it is practice. So the practice वाला part also we have tried to solve as best we can for you. Now all that is for you कि भाई go practice, do the thing, resources we have provided. Now moving on to current affairs. Current affairs की जब हम बात करते हैं तो सबसे पहला हमारा क्वेश्चन आता है कि how many months of current affairs should I be doing? तो the answer over here is 12 months. And there's a reason for this. 12 months का क्या मतलब है? From June of 2025 to your exam. अब बोलने को this will be slightly less than 12 months. From June to May, अब even May का current affairs will not be very relevant. So June to April only. April and May का नहीं रह गया, 10 महीने का आपका रह गया. ये क्यों है? Because generally the idea is whatever was relevant in the last month, 12 months before prelims has been covered in the previous prelims. And please keep in mind, if anything is so important that it needs to be talked about, it will be mentioned somewhere or the other in the last 12 months. If it was not so important, कि 3 years ago was the last time people talked about it, it is not so important for you to focus on. And current affairs में एक और चीज होती है that you can aim for maybe 85 to 90% completion. If you're going beyond this, you are wasting your time. So a lot of people ask कि, you know, should I read 2 magazines or should I read, you know, 1 more newspaper, and then should I read newspaper and magazine? None of these things that you need to do. इस पे बात करते हैं. The way to cover current affairs is choose any one of these 3 options. Don't do more than one. If you're doing newspaper, if you're making your own notes out of newspaper, continue to do this. This is the best way to do it. But agar till now you had not done newspapers, monthly magazines are helpful for you. Now particularly when I was preparing, I used to prefer this second method. Why? Because it gives me a certain amount of flexibility. Flexibility क्या कि I am not bound to read the newspaper on a daily basis, and you know I can do this whenever I want in the way that I want. कि I have 12 magazines that I need to do, and then I can move them around. कि okay, I'm going to do June, July, August का magazine in the month of January. I'm going to do September, October, November का magazine in the month of February. So I have that freedom to move it around the way I want. Finally, coming to compilations. Now compilations क्या है? These are things like PT 365. These are compilations annual basis पे. There is not much of a difference between a monthly magazine and a compilation. Difference बस इतना सा आता है कि भाई let's say we have Jan, Feb, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December. Right? And then we have polity, you know, geography, history, whatever, सारे subjects. तो monthly magazine क्या कर रही हैं? Monthly magazines are just doing this. 1 month में all subjects. What are these compilations doing? They are just doing this. Polity for the last 12 months. So the information in both of them is pretty much going to be the same. Monthly magazine is just covering the 1 month ka relevant information for all subjects. Compilation is polity only for all 12 months. So there is not much of a difference between what you're doing. So choose any one of them. If you're doing monthly magazines, don't worry about PT 365 because there'll be a lot of FOMO के PT 365 ऐसे कर लो, ये कर लो, छोड़ दो. अगर PT 365 कर लो, then don't do either of these two things. Waste of time है, इतना current affairs करने की कोई जरूरत नहीं है हमें. Right? Now, for this also, core current affairs magazine we have come up, and like somebody is pointing out in the chat, the core current affairs magazine we started from the month of October, but as a commitment to like the people who are associated with us on the channel, our students, we will be coming out with these magazines from June 2025 onwards. June, July, August, September. These extra 4 months ka magazines will come out sometime in the month of February because we are working on them in a backdated manner. तो अभी अक्टूबर का आ चुका है, नवंबर का आ चुका है, दिसंबर का आ चुका है, जनवरी का मंथ खत्म होगा तो फर्स्ट सेकंड वीक ऑफ फेब में जैन का आ जाएगा एंड थर्ड वीक ऑफ फेब तक हमारा जून ऑनवर्ड्स जो मैगजीन्स बची हैं दोज विल आल्सो कम आउट. The point of this is what? कि भाई we try and keep it as concise as possible. We don't want the magazines to exceed 100, 125 pages. We want to cover only what matters. So that's the idea with the core magazine. Now, priority order, reiterating one more time. Static subjects first, then the current dynamic subjects. उसमें भी first you do the basic books. Basic books के साथ एक बार पढ़ ली तो then I look at the previous year questions. I try and understand कि अच्छा in these basic books where are the previous year questions going to focus more on, which informs my second reading and third reading. So I don't read the whole book multiple times. When I'm revising, when I'm doing any of these things, I don't read Spectrum 1,000 pages entirely all over again. No. Previous year questions tell me कि अच्छा Spectrum में there are some specific areas जहाँ से multiple questions are asked. I want to focus on those areas more. Finally, tests. Tests are an indicative tool, right? Test is a thermometer. Test मतलब thermometer क्या करता है? Thermometer does not tell you what problem you have. It just tells you that you have a problem. It will tell you कि fever है. अब fever क्यों है? That is something that you have to figure out. So similarly, test के बारे में we'll talk about that giving tests is important in order to figure out my weaknesses so that there I can go back to the basic books and cover those weaknesses. Right. So basic process, you read, you review and get feedback if required. Now moving on to this is Prelims 360 का जो course है. For those of you that are interested, we are bringing out a new batch. मतलब you can check out all of this on courses.upscprep.com. Moving on further, Prelims SIP, for it's just a test based course. Now this is for people who have already done some of the reading, because over here there'll be no classes. This is just test based and focusing on consistency. More details courses.upscprep.com पे आप जाके देख सकते हो. Now coming to topper secrets. Now this is the important part. Why? Because there are people who clear civil services exam with a very regular frequency. Right? Somebody will get maybe a 300 ka rank once, then 200 ka rank, then 100 under 100 rank. There are people who successively clear this exam and they figured something out. What is it? First and foremost, that if your study is mood dependent, that कि आज mood नहीं है पढ़ने का. How many of you have felt this in the last 2 months? कि आज I don't feel like studying at all. Right, most of us. There will be someday or the other. Maybe it is too cold outside. Maybe you are too cozy in your bed. Maybe it's just like you're not feeling well. Maybe you were down. Maybe you were up late last night. 100 different reasons. But if that is determining whether you study or not, you will not succeed. You have to show up on your desk every day, whether you like it or not. Because a lot of the times that mood is something that goes away once you start working. But if I wait for it, that will be it. I will not study and I will have gone one more day. Now mood can also be on the basis of कि I got bad marks in mocks, तो फिर मतलब अब mood नहीं कर रहा. Then it can be something like कि good marks in mocks आ गए तो I've celebrated so much कि अच्छा अब 3 दिन पढ़ाई नहीं हुई है. Your mood should be regulated. You cannot control your mood, but you can regulate your mood. Please keep this in mind. There is a difference. I cannot control my mood. There are things beyond my control. The hormones in my body, the weather outside. मतलब कोई और आके डांट मार के चला गया मेरे को, मतलब एक्सीडेंट हो गया. 100 different things can happen. I cannot control my mood. I can regulate my mood. What comes into my mind is not in my control. How long it stays in my mind is something in my control. That's what I want you to keep in mind. Now, a lot of people sometimes feel that I need to be motivated in order to actually work. How many of you feel that way? I need to be motivated in order to work. अब सबने पढ़ लिया है तो then like everybody is saying no I don't need that. But I want to tell you categorically and clearly that motivation comes from action. After you start working, you will start feeling motivated. If you're waiting for motivation to like start working, you're not going to start at all. Now, इसमें please keep in mind that there is something also called burnout. Everybody understands what's the meaning of burnout? तो burnout क्या हो जाता है? That I have just pushed myself too much and therefore now I'm not able to focus. My mind is constantly, phasing out. My body is in pain. Matlab, I'm not sleeping enough. If you're in that situation, that is not mood. That is your body giving you a signal that you need a rest. Right? So being aware of these things, right? Being aware of your mood, regulating it, and then being aware if you're going towards burnout, these are things that require a lot of EQ. EQ सबको पता है? Is there anybody over here who doesn't understand what EQ means? Right? Everybody knows. EQ होना जरूरी है. IQ से ज्यादा for civil services exam, it is more important that you have emotional understanding of yourself. If you have that, life will be good. Now, second, planning and procrastination. A number of us procrastinate just thinking कि यार मतलब too many things to do, कब करेंगे क्या करेंगे. You have to schedule your day. Before you wake up, you should be aware of what you're doing next. This is one of the core reasons why we constantly share plans of action कि भाई अच्छा अगले दिन what are you supposed to do. Because if in the morning I wake up and then I'm deciding कि अच्छा आज क्या पढ़ें, at times there will be days where you will skip because you're like okay नहीं करते आज. But if it is pre-planned, pre-programmed, today I'm supposed to do chapters 4 to 10 of ABC book, you will be more likely to do it. Second, have a routine. Routine का मतलब यहाँ पे क्या है? That every day wake up at the same time, go to the gym at the same time, or like if not going to the gym, do some physical activity, go for a walk, jump, dance, sing, whatever the hell, but do some physical activity. The idea is simple. Our bodies are meant to move, and if we are not moving, our bodies are not functioning at their maximum level. Finally, taking breaks is also part of the process. You should not think of कि once I have done everything then I'll take a break. No. Civil services exam में 4 महीने का, if you're talking about prelims, you will require some breaks in the middle. And more than that, sometimes life gets heavy. I may get sick. There might be an emergency. I will have to take a break. There should be some space in your scheduling, in your planning, so that it's not so easy for you to procrastinate. क्यों? क्योंकि if you don't have a break, the moment something odd happens, life goes out of whack. Now, इसका एक alternative है, and I think a lot of people do this. Civil services exam, UPSC aspirants जो हैं, this is the favorite form of procrastination that we have. How many of you are guilty of doing this? That I'm procrastinating by planning. Every day I'll wake up and then I'll make a new plan, and then like tomorrow, obviously I've not followed the plan, so I'll make a new plan, and every day 2 hours, 3 hours planning में चल रहा है. It's very, very easy to do this. And please keep in mind, after a while, planning से ज्यादा कुछ नहीं होता. It's the execution that matters a lot more. Right? Then engaged reading. If you're just taking in information, फेंकते जा रहे हो, like for example, we have talked about so many things right now. If you don't review them, if you don't actively think about it, all of this, ये आपके brain के दरवाजे पे ही, it will just go out. And then what you'll feel, which is something I feel that a lot of you will have felt, I've read something, I've read the entire Lakshmikant, but I don't remember what I have read. How many of you felt that way? And that is absolutely normal, because what you're not doing is the processing part. Whenever you're reading, you need to process. Process का क्या मतलब है? Try active recall. Let's do a very simple exercise. We have covered about 34, 35 slides so far. Active recall. What are the things that we have talked about so far? There are, let's say, 6, 7 things that we have talked about. How many of you remember what it was? Right. So let me just walk you through. We talked a little bit about identity. We talked about the problem of civil services exam. And then we also talked about, can you do it in 4 months? Then we went to syllabus and sources. Then after that, we talked about current affairs. We talked about static and dynamic subjects. Right. And finally, we were at topper secrets. Topper secrets में we talked about mood. We talked about the fact, अब मेरे को भी एकदम से निकल गया दिमाग से. Third thing we are talking about is engaged reading, planning and procrastination, P and P. तो ये क्या हुआ, just by doing this one very simple exercise, what have I done? I've just recalled, okay, all of these things we had just covered. I want you to do this at the end of each and every chapter that you read, and do this one simple thing, and your life will become a lot more easier. You will not have to read the entire books all over again and again and again. क्योंकि सिर्फ रीडिंग अगर आप कर रहे हो तो that is not the best way to prepare. It's doubling your effort and not giving you the output that you require. You have to process, and processing में there are other things that you can do. What we just did is active recall. I want you to also try these other things. Now these are things I'll leave to you. Chat GPT के साथ जाओ, खेलो, and it'll give you more ideas about how you can do this. So once you process these things, they go into your long-term memory. They become interconnected with other ideas, and then it's easier for you to recall these things. Right. Now I think there's a very other suggestion, which is ki engage with the idea and then try and apply it to society. Sure, but like let's say Coriolis force आप पढ़ रहे हो, how are you applying Coriolis force to society? So therefore, some areas may, let's say if you're studying Indian society, Indian polity, sure, you can apply it to society. But some economy का abstract concept है, it's not always 100% applicable to society. Active recall is just something that forces your brain to recall in that moment, which makes it a lot more likely to stick around. Finally, physical and mental health. It is your job and responsibility to take care of your physical health and your mental health. Nobody else is going to come and do it for you. If your back is constantly hurting, if your neck is constantly hurting, if you're getting carpal tunnel syndrome, carpal tunnel, how many of you know what is carpal tunnel syndrome? Again, not something important, but that's the idea कि अगर दर्द हो रहा है in your body, naturally you won't be able to focus. You have to take care of your body. It is your job and responsibility. Similarly, you have to take care of your mind. So 30 minutes of physical activity, 15 minutes of meditation. Meditation in the modern day and age is training for the mind. Like I said earlier, what comes into your head is not in your control. But what stays in your head is absolutely in your control. How long it stays in your control. And meditation is something that really helps with how long something stays in your head. You have to do these things. Otherwise, you are not optimally functioning. You are letting go of a lot of progress just by not focusing on these two very basic things. Right. तो टॉपर्स को ये हमारे सीक्रेट्स पता है कुछ कुछ. Now coming to previous year questions. Previous year questions में how do you use them? So couple of things over here. Number one, let's say every year there are repeated themes. We've talked about it previously also. So every section में what we will be doing, these repeated themes के लिए we will be coming out with videos on YouTube. Right, couple of them are already out. I think polity का out है, geography का will be out in the coming week or so. Every week में one or two videos will keep coming out. We've already taken some webinars on this, but that's the idea. 80-20 rule के तहत जो important themes है, we'll be sharing with you. But I want you to still go back and also try and think of it by yourself. Now, इसके लिए what we've also done is, I think I've created this, which is Prelims GPT. तो जैसे अब इसको मैं बोलता हूँ ये, I've given it like a lot of data, and what I can do is simply repeated sub themes and economy previous year questions. Right, like I was talking about money and banking, bar, OMO, sterilization, interest rate hikes, agriculture and allied, MSP पे आ जाता है, खरीफ and रबी पे आ जाता है, fiscal federalism, finance commission, external sector and trade. तो हो क्या रहा है? You can also ask it to give me the most frequent question types, which is I think the same. I wanted it to, तो अभी ये स्टेटमेंट वाले इस चीज ने बता दी. यू कैन स्पेसिफिकली आस्क इट कि ओके, व्हाट आर द क्वेश्चंस दैट हैव बीन आस्क्ड रिलेटेड टू इन्फ्लेशन. तो अभी ये स्पेसिफिकली क्वेश्चंस भी आपको लिस्ट आउट करके दे देगा. जिंदगी थोड़ी आसान बनाते हैं. तो आई विल बी शेयरिंग दिस इन द कमिंग वीक और सो इन वीडियो. टिल देन आई एम ऑल्सो वर्किंग ऑन इम्प्रूविंग इट. तो प्रीलिम्स 2023 में क्वेश्चन ये आ गया. अब आप इसको बोलो कि स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चन मुझे दे दो, तो इट विल गिव यू द स्पेसिफिक क्वेश्चन आल्सो. राइट नाउ व्हाट इट हैज डन इज इट हैज टोल्ड यू अबाउट द क्वेश्चन. तो ऑब्वियसली AI tools are great, but you have to be a little specific. Types of questions, this is just something that we saw again, कि भाई different kinds of questions are coming. Now please keep in mind that UPSC generally what it does is it basically tests something in 1 year and then goes and doubles down on it in the next year. Meaning 2022 May we had some questions of this kind, 23 May we had a lot of questions of this kind, 24 May we had some questions of three statement kind, 25 May we had a lot of questions on this statement kind. So then this is also something that you can pay attention to. Agle saal mein what is something that we might get more of. This will only happen if you go and look at the actual questions. Now, I want you to look at two statements. Statement 1 over here and statement 2 over here. Are they the same? Yes or no? What about the others? Padha nahi ya bas like done with it? They are pretty much the same. All that they are doing, isotherms deviate north and यहाँ पे क्या बोल दिया? Poleward. While crossing the landmass, they turn poleward, right? Deviate north over ocean and south over continent. Landmass की वजह continent की वजह landmass बोल दिया, north की वजह poleward बोल दिया, right? Crossing the ocean, मतलब same statement. So this is a question from 2024 and this is a question from 25. इतना बेशर्मी से UPSC just recycles sometimes statements. So this is the importance of previous year questions. Go and dive into it, yaar. Matlab, don't wait for other things. Now, basic versus applied. This is something that we've seen at the beginning of the session. Absolutely basic, simple question. ऐसा भी पूछते हैं. But nowadays they're asking more of applied questions. So even if I know the basic remembering wala thing, I need to also learn to apply it, which will only come through practice. So previous year questions will give you a sense of these types of things. In this, you can sort of take a little breather with the factual questions. Breather क्या है कि any given year में factual questions will be dependent on the facts of that year, right? So therefore now if there is a new construction which is happening on Dornier Polo, it will no longer be greenfield because Dornier Polo has already been created and now more construction is happening over here. Similarly, very fact based. तो इन पे मुझे ज्यादा दिमाग नहीं लगाना है. I want to focus a lot more on the concepts. But now that this has been asked, I should at least go and check where is this, right? So this is something that you have to do with previous year questions. You also get into the options and look at where at times options ke basis pe questions have also come, right? Now finally coming to test series. Test series mein there are a couple of things. Basic principles kya hai? When do you give a test? You give a test after you have finished a subject. Don't give a test before that because you will score poorly and then you will feel demotivated. And after one round of reading of all subjects, then you start giving full tests, which is, let's say, agar aap plan karke chalte ho, to then sometime in the month of April, you should start giving full tests. By then, if you're, systematically going about your preparation, you should have done one reading of your entire thing. So overall, agar main break down karoon, let's say you have about 15 weeks till prelims. Roughly 15 weeks will be 105 days, right? About that. I think less than that we have left now. We have 90 days left, 120 days left. We are on the 24th of January. You have it on the 24th of May, February, March, April, May. 4 full months, 120 days. So 120 days will be some 16, 17 weeks. So these 17 weeks can be broken down into multiple parts. Last 2 weeks, these are in reserve. Reserve money, I do not know what I will do with them, but I will keep them in reserve. Ki bhai last moment pe I don't know, something might be left, so we'll figure out then and there. Second section, matlab bache kitne? 15 weeks. So 15 weeks can be broken down into two parts, 10 weeks and 5 weeks. So 10 weeks jo hamare hain, this is when you're doing the first reading. 5 weeks jo hai, this is your first revision. यहाँ पे you're giving section tests, यहाँ पे you're giving full tests. Last 2 weeks में you're giving like whatever is required, right? Because I don't know, some people might feel कि I need to do more geography, some might feel I need to do more polity, whatever it is. This basic breakdown, if you have in your mind, and then even within that, you can be a little more specific. Week 1 mein what I'm doing, week 7 mein what I'm doing, your life will be a lot more easier. So section tests, full tests, and whatever required. Please keep this in mind. Using tests mein, I want you to do a couple of things. Number one, I want you to have some hypothesis. Meaning, in this particular test, I am going to try and attempt 90 plus questions. Then see ki bhai, okay, how am I scoring? Am I scoring well? In, let's say, I'm going to attempt less than 70 questions. Try out these things. Don't have, how many of you have a fixed number in your head ki I must attempt, let's say 80, 90, whatever number of questions. You have some number in your head ki this many questions I must attempt. Right, obviously it depends on the exam difficulty, but also I want you to try out what works best for you. There might be some people for which this might work, for others this might work. Which is it that is working for you is something that you will have to test out. Experiments करके देखो. Test series, if you have some, एक test में just mark all A's. कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. You can give that test again, but try and see what will happen. Have that sort of mindset of experimentation ki I want to try out this particular thing in this test. Ki I've done my basic concepts. I'm only going to do the conceptual questions. I'm not going to touch the factual questions. What happens? Because we take tests too seriously and that sometimes creates a burden of tests on us. Don't make it a burden. Have fun with it. Finally, take some calculated risk. Calculated risk का क्या मतलब है यहाँ पे? Let's say if there are 4 options, what is my probability of choosing the correct option? 25%? If I am down to 2 options, what is my probability of choosing the correct option? Right, 50%. One of the 2 has to be correct. If in any question I have reached here, I want you to take a shot. मतलब क्या है इसका कि अगर मेरे पास 10 questions ऐसे हैं where I'm down to the last 2 options but I'm not sure which of these 2 is correct, I want you to do that. मतलब मारो तुक्का. क्यों? 5 questions you will get correct, 5 questions you will get wrong. The correct questions will be plus 10 marks, minus 10 by 3 will be point. Net you will be plus 6.5 marks, 6.67, but like for round figures. This is the idea. ये मैथ समझ आया? Negative marking है, but this is a risk that I should take. This is a good risk to take. अगर 3 ऑप्शन मेरे पास रहते हैं when I'm 33% probability, तो that is a probability that I want you to go and now test out. Does that probability work for you? Try and think in this manner. Be analytical, be practical. कि अच्छा, there are some risks that I should take. 4 options पे when it is 25%, it is net 0. 5 question आप सही करोगे, मतलब 15 question आप गलत करोगे, net you will come out at 0. But when I'm doing 2 options and 3 options, there is a slightly positive edge that I have and I want you to use that edge. So this is the idea. In tests, try and take these sorts of calculated risks. Have that mindset of experimentation. If you do that, you will learn a lot of important and interesting things. But what we do is we just get stuck on the idea of कि नहीं ऐसे करना है, ये करना है. मत करो, chill, relax, take it as a game, learn the rules of the game. That's it. Now, coming to revision, what do you do after a test? I want you to focus on 2 basic kinds of mistakes that you might be making. Right? One is a conceptual mistake and the other is a factual mistake. So conceptual and factual mistakes, what is the difference? Conceptual mistake will be that I have not understood the concept at all. Right? For example, in the questions that we just saw, this has to do with some fact, but if I've seen the concept of how are isotherms bending, how are ocean currents moving, this is a conceptual question. Right? On the other hand, this is a very factual question. I know or I don't know. There is not much logic that I can apply in this particular question. So factual or conceptual questions में ये difference हमें लेके चलना है for the very simple reason that if I'm making a lot of mistakes in conceptual questions, then I need more reading. I have not understood the concept. Whereas if you're making mistakes in factual questions, I need to tolerate the mistakes. Everybody will make mistakes in factual questions. The people who are clearing will not make mistakes in conceptual questions. If you're making mistakes here, you are out of the race. If you're making mistakes here, it's okay. It's a little more tolerable. Right. So this is something that you have to keep in mind. Now, there are also some silly mistakes. How many of you have done this that, I wanted to mark B, but somehow while filling the OMR, I have marked C? Or let's say I had to choose the incorrect option, but I've chosen the correct option. होता है ये, focus नहीं था, ध्यान भटक गया, number of things might happen. If that is happening with you, this is something that you need to be ruthless about. ये is just you bleeding marks. You cannot afford that. It's a very competitive exam. This is something you cannot afford at all. Right. Which brings us to making notes. Now, making notes for prelims, number one, is not something that I would recommend. If you're making comparative notes, if you're making some tables which will help you recall information better, go about it. But making entire notes of Lakshmikant, making entire notes of Spectrum is a waste in particular prelims. ज्योग्राफी की अगर मैं बात करूं तो ज्योग्राफी में जो बेसिक एनसीईआरटीज हैं हमारी, उसी के अंदर कचरा करो, मेक द बुक अ मेस, रिमेंबर थ्रू दैट rather than recreating the entire book all over again. Why is this the case? Because in prelims, it is a lot more fact and figure based. So if I'm making some comparative table क्या हो गई? Let's say money bill and finance bill. This is something that is often asked. तो money bill and finance bill में लोकसभा की powers क्या है, राज्यसभा की powers क्या है? I've read the sections and now I've made a comparative table for myself. I'll go and refer to this table whenever I want to revise this. This is something you should do, right? This is helping you understand, because this is, again, you are engaging with the topic. You can make the difference of powers of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, right? Or governor and president, that sort of a thing. Do. But पूरी किताब के नोट्स बनाने की जरूरत नहीं है. Second, notes should be organized as per topics of the syllabus. Particularly, I want you to make notes for current affairs. Current affairs के definitely notes बनाओ. मतलब मंथली मैगजीन अगर आप पढ़ रहे हो तो then notes can be something that you've highlighted in the book. Use PDF markers. A lot of people recently I asked on Telegram so are using a lot of digital apps, good notes. Yeah, if you're even making on pen and paper, try and make some short notes of current affairs, because otherwise 1200 pages if you have to do at the end, even if it's let's say 800 pages if you're doing core magazine, still a lot. Some short you have to do. Also make a note of your mistakes in tests. Because if you do this, you are more likely to not repeat that mistake. But if I just think of कि अच्छा नहीं last time वो किया था, अगली बार magically it won't happen, you will keep making the same mistakes. Learning from tests is this. I note down the mistakes that I made and then I don't do them again. I try and improve on the things that I have done. Right. Finally, whatever notes you are making, be it current affairs, be it test ka mistakes, if you are not reviewing those notes, it's useless. So notes बना रहे हो does not mean I've made them and I've thrown them away. It is a constant process and needs to happen constantly. Right. तो revision की बात करें, finally, I think last couple of things. Revision में there are a couple of ways that you can do this. Personally, I used to prefer this one. Right, that maybe I'm doing a lot of active recall whenever I'm reading a chapter. Like I'll show you that if I'm reading a chapter, let's say GC Lyonka. So I've read this chapter on volcanism and earthquakes. And at the end of the chapter itself, I've tried to do some active recall exercise right here. कि अच्छा क्या क्या इस chapter में पढ़ा था, what were the different sections, what were the things that I was doing. It's not much, it is just a basic review exercise. So beyond that review exercise, I only used to do this, right? 4 or 5 days in a month, I will keep just for, okay, what are the things that I have done? I'll just go review them one more time. Alternatively, you can do it. Let's say you keep Saturday every week. Maybe Saturday go, I'm just going to review whatever it is that I've done in the week. Or maybe 1 hour in a day. The last 1 hour of the day when you're not that energetic, कि भाई अब सोने का time हो रहा है, you're just lethargic, to just review whatever it is has been done in the day. So multiple ways you can choose. Try out. See what works for you. I said that this worked for me may not work for you. So which one is it that is working for you? You have to try and figure it out. Now second, obviously, revision के लिए जब notes आप बना रहे हो, तो these are preferably after second or third round of reading. First round of reading के बाद comparative tables वगैरह जो बना रहे हो, then they are great for helping you revise as well. If you're making, let's say, tests ka short notes or making your current affairs ka notes, then they become the base for your revision further, saving time for you. हर चीज का notes बनाने की जरूरत नहीं है, but जहां जहां बना रहे हो, they will help you save time. And this is something, like I said, active recall. Do it at the end of each chapter. We did it in the middle of this session just to give you an idea of how useful it can be. That's something that I want you to do in each and every one of your daily readings. Which brings us to the most important part, consistency. Consistency, how many of you face a problem with consistency? I try and be consistent, but I have problems. And good, because consistency is the actual hard part with this exam. Now, this is a reframing of the problem, but I want you to think in this way. I tried and I was not able to hit the target. What does that mean? If I scored 30 marks out of 200, it's a mistake. It's okay to make a mistake. But because I feared that I would score only 30 marks out of 200, I did not even try. This is a failure. Because now you don't even know what to improve on. This is a mistake. Next time I'll be here, I'll score maybe 40. Next time I'm here, I've scored 50. I'm here, I've scored 80. I'm here, I've scored 100 or 120. Bullseye is not scoring 200. Bullseye is clearing prelims. I'm not supposed to score 100 out of 100 marks. I'm supposed to get across the cutoff. That's the idea. If I make a mistake, I can improve on it. But if I'm not even trying, I'm going to fail. This is something that is applicable for consistency also. If you fail once in consistency, it's okay. Try again tomorrow. Keep trying. कोशिश करने वाले की कभी हार नहीं होती. This is something, I think it's a very, very cliche line that you might have heard from your parents, school, everywhere, but it is true. If you keep trying, something will happen. But if you don't even try based on ki, okay, but I tried so many times and nothing happened. Sure, nothing will happen. Keep trying. Now, in theory, it all looks like this. Perfect. I will start today. I will improve. I will be consistent. In practice, there are good days, there are bad days, right? Life goes up and down like this. But what we have to pay attention to is that if we zoom out, there is progress. A day will look good or bad. There will be days where studying even 2 hours is going to be a task. And there will be days when studying 10 hours is easy. Has that happened to you? कि भाई 2 घंटा पढ़ने में जान निकल जा रही है, but then some days it's just like so easy to study 8-10 hours. It happens with everybody. Good days and bad days. We have to push through them. We have to keep working. Aim to have no 0 days. What is this idea? कि 0 नहीं होना है किसी दिन पे. Minimum 1 घंटा you have to study. If you can do that, you will increase the number of good days by itself. No 0 days is the rule that I want you to keep in mind. Try and go with that. Things will turn out well. Finally, I want you to leave with one core mindset shift, which is that the obstacle is the way. A lot of us, when we face problems, we just focus a lot on the problem and then we stop thinking about how I can solve this problem. With civil services exam preparation, sooner or later, you will hit a brick wall. There is no way about it. You will hit an obstacle. Your job is to think about how I can overcome this brick wall. Do I smash it? Do I climb over it? Do I go over from the side? I have to think of how do I overcome this wall? The obstacle is asking you to figure out the way itself. Depending on the kind of obstacle you face, it will also give you this is where the solution lies. The obstacle is the way. The obstacle is not the end of it. Everybody will face an obstacle. The person who will find success is the one who finds the way to overcome it. And there is always a way to overcome it. There is no such obstacle, particularly for civil services exam ki taiyari ke liye, which you cannot overcome. Right. So that will be all for this session. Now, if there are any questions in the Q&A section, I will take those up. And thank you all for joining. I hope this session has been useful. Please do let me know in the chat if you found this helpful. It would also be a little motivation for me कि भाई मतलब 1.5 घंटा I've been talking constantly. Has it even been helpful?